Good morning, students. Today we start with a story, a short story which is part of your paper titled Theorising Sexuality. It is titled Quilt by Ismat Chugtai. I have already shared the PDF of the short story. I hope you have read it. So, this is basically about the author. I'll give you a summary and we'll discuss the major themes. As you have seen, this short story is a very simple one and it carries one of the controversial theme, that is female homosexuality. So let us begin. About Ismat Chugtai. She was an Indian Urdu novelist, short story writer and filmmaker. And beginning in the 1930s, she wrote extensively on themes which were mostly controversial themes like about female sexuality, femininity, middle class gentility, class conflict, and it was often from a Marxist perspective. And her style is characterized by literary realism, and she established herself as a significant voice in the Urdu literature of the 20th century. And she is one among the legends of Urdu fiction who can be tied along with one of the greatest legend, that is Saadat Ali Hussain Mando. She was awarded Padma Shri by Government of India in 1976. The idea of feminism in its true sense and spirit had not quite arrived in the subcontinent in India during 1940s. But much of what Chugtai wrote, it had this touch of progressivism, which is unusual, which is considered to be so shocking during that period where this idea of feminism had not really seeped into this nation. She talked about all those social, psychological, and sexual problems faced by women, and it was shocking to the reading public to to see a piece of work from a woman which discussed all those taboo topics. So Chugtai stressed that real feminine emotions, all those real feminine sensitivities, are hardly ever understood in such a orthodox, male dominated society like that of India. And it was such a first such attempt in Urdu fiction. And talking about the style of Chugtai, we see a flowing and spontaneous style, as you have read in this particular short story. And it was occasionally peppered with satirical and witty remarks, making reading her short stories, her works, a delight. It contained all those idiomatic and colloquial Urdu, which is produced in an effortless manner, which is something for what for something which she is known for. And many of Chugtai's short stories revolve around the trials, all those difficulties faced by women. We see oppressed women fighting out there alone, fighting their battle alone. We see such kind of characters in the works of Chugtai. And in most of her short stories, she points a finger at that orthodox society which always gave an unjust treatment for women. And though she did write about the problems of women from underprivileged class too, mostly she portrayed the problems of middle class women. This is what she said about her work titled Quilt. Lihaf. This is Urdu title. I am still labeled as the writer of Lihaf. The story brought me so much notoriety that I got sick of life. It became the proverbial stick to beat me with, and whatever I wrote afterwards got crushed under its weight. So, These line itself shows how much controversy it created and how much she had to bear for this single piece of work. So, this is what she said in her book titled A Life in Words Memoirs. And the aftermath of writing Quilt. In 1942, her short story Lihaf appeared in Adab-e-Latif, a literary magazine published from Lahore. And as I said earlier, its central theme is female homosexuality. It actually sent tremors across the subcontinent, and there were lots of scathing criticism against it. Chugtai being summoned by the Lahore High Court to defend herself against the charges of obscenity. And we see she was more notorious as an author. As you say, it's the opposite of famous. As an author, we see the notoriety of an author because she was a woman dealing with one of the controversial, one considered to be the taboo subject in the society. It is still the taboo subject in society, homosexuality, and even more worse, it is female homosexuality. So, this is the summary of the story. The story, as you know, is told from the point of view of a small girl who is the niece of the protagonist Begum Jan. Begum Jan takes care of this girl who was a mischievous girl who used to beat her brothers, and her mother wanted to teach her a lesson, so she took her to Begum Jan, and it was the hardest lesson she learned. Begum Jan, the major character in the story, she had a very depressing life after the marriage. Her husband is Nawab, and he was much older than her and was thought to be extremely respectable for never having any kind of encounters with prostitutes. But it is also revealed that he had interest in boys. And this Begum was most of the time lonely because Nawab kept her along with all those all those antique pieces, and it is said that later he completely forgot about her. So this lonely Begum starts to wither, and she has this maid, Rabo. Rabo is a servant girl who is not so pretty, but she had very deft hands who gave Begum Jan 2 hours of massage. Massage is in quotes. And when the narrator is left at Begum Jan's place by her mother, she realizes that despite her past admiration of love for Begum Jan, there lie many secrets with her. When she starts living with this lady, she understands that Begum Jan is not really what she thought of. At night, she saw these great shadows formed by the quilt of Begum Jan. She sees the images of elephant, and her odd behavior in the absence of Rabo bring to light their hidden relationship, which actually gives a kind of a psychological trauma for this narrator, who is still a small girl who couldn't understand the sexual relationships. So these are the major themes of the short story. The important theme is marriage. Chugtai portrays marriage as an oppressive institution that validates female subservience. Marriage plays a very important role in the story. Begum Jan is actually trapped in this domestic setup, that is, family, due to her marriage with Nawab, and she is unable to free herself. And though she can't free herself, she finds a solution, she finds a way out. She becomes a transgressive woman who explores the lengths of her sexuality with standing within the parameters of patriarchy. Without giving up this married life, she explores her pleasure in her own way. And then there is this theme of oppression. We see that both Begum and Nawab are the victims of oppression in their own ways. They can't actually reveal their sexual orientation because they fear the attack of the orthodox society. So, here the author talks about the evils of oppression of women as well as of men in general. Despite their they can't reveal their sexual orientation because of all those social dogmas that are thrust upon them. Here we see Nawab is oppressed by all those social norms and is unable to reveal his identity to the outsider. So he keeps all those boys, and though he uh, presents himself as mentor of these boys, we know what actually happens. And here, being a woman, Begum Jan undergoes double oppression. She herself is oppressed because of her gender, and her sexuality is oppressed due to one dimensional ideas of what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And then there is theme of female sexuality and desire. So Begum has no choice but to get married off and to get installed. The word is installed as a as an object in Nawab's house. She has been given no space to explore her identity or sexuality. And this is why her expression of sexuality manifests in a completely unconventional way. And these are the themes like the theme of transgression, as you see in Begum Jan, and uncovering secrets. So, Quilt is the place where they cover all those secrets. Outside the quilt, they try to lead, or they pretend that they lead a normal life, and inside the quilt they are the real people. So the quilt is the one. So that is why it is termed, the title is given as quilt. Quilt is the one which keep all those secrets. Behind or under the quilt, they reveal their real identity. So this story is basically story about LGBTQIA community. Think about the period which it was written. Even now, they are not accepted in the society, even with all those court orders. They are still there are still stigma associated with this community LGBTQIA. It includes lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual community. So these are the major themes of the short story. So here, quilt is not a symbol of romanticism, but it is actually the symbol of shame and hypocrisy that people hide under to fulfill their innate desires. When they get deprived of their sexual gratification, they become real under the quilt. And Begum Jan was more a kind of a victim and a pitiable creature than she turns out to be. Though this small girl is afraid of this Begum Jan, from the other side, we understand that Begum Jan is also a victim of the unconventional society. She is also a prisoner in this conventional society in this conventional society. So here ends the discussion on quilt. Please read the short story and please go through this lecture, and I will provide you additional materials. Hope it is clear, girls. Thank you. Have a nice day.